Why is English a Germanic language? The story behind English's Germanic roots goes back to about 1500 years ago in northwestern Europe. Germanic peoples that spent centuries living in separate individual tribes, most of them having avoided the expansion of the Roman Empire northeast. After the fall of Rome, the migration period saw the mass movement of various Germanic peoples, many of whom arrived on the island of Great Britain. Some writings, notably the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, add that the King of the Britons, a part of the local Celtic peoples, invited the Angles people to the island for help in repelling the Picts, the peoples of modern Scotland, in exchange for land in the southeast. This led to waves of settlers who had found 7 kingdoms. However, the information in the chronicles is most certainly not confirmed, written nearly 3 centuries after the events that unfolded, though using earlier sources. Regardless, during the wave of Germanic migration to Britain in the 5th to 7th centuries, West Germanic languages such as Old Saxon and Old Frisian became more widely spoken on the island. These Western Germanic speakers initially spoke many dialects, but with time developed into the Anglo-Saxon language, also known as Old English. The growth of Old English actively displaced or integrated local languages, such as Latin from the era of the Roman occupation, which was already in decline, or Celtic languages. However, areas like Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and even Cornwall continue to speak in Celtic languages, even integrating some Germanic elements. But in modern-day England, Old English gradually became the dominant language over the course of several centuries, developing 4 main dialects known as Northumbrian, Kentish, West Saxon, and Mercian. Though Greek and Latin elements were brought from the introduction of Christianity, Old English kept its German roots, having similar aspects such as demonstrative pronouns. The next major change came during the 8th to 11th centuries, with increased Viking raids and settlements in Great Britain, mostly in northern and eastern England. The Scandinavians, who spoke dialects of a North Germanic language known as Old Norse, often settled and created new communities in areas not developed by the Anglo-Saxons. Because of this, Old English and Old Norse speakers from different communities began to interact, leaving a mark on the local language. This was accentuated by the rule of Danish kings during the early 11th century, which caused locals to speak in both Old English and a Norse-influenced dialect. Though Norse declined over time as the Scandinavians stopped their incursions, Old Norse greatly influenced Old English, borrowing about 2,000 words, many of which have survived until today. Other aspects, such as phrasal verbs, may have also come from Norse influence. Although some scholars argue that Old English died out in favor of Old Norse, then developed into future versions of English, this is simply a theory. For the moment, the consensus remains that Old English remained prominent, simply influenced by Old Norse. Overall, English is a Germanic language because of settlers from northwestern Germany and Denmark 1500 years ago who spoke Western Germanic dialects. This displaced the local Celtic languages of England in favor of what would become Old English, a Germanic language. With time, Old English grew in popularity, which also saw further influence from the Northern Germanic branch following Viking settlements, speakers of Old Norse. Old English would then develop into Middle and Modern English, which have kept much of their Germanic elements, such as parts of its verbal system, pronoun system, and much of its vocabulary. Today, about 26% of words are of Germanic origin, many of which are commonly used. Of course, when we talk about the composition of the English language, we simply cannot ignore French. After all, over half of English words are of Latin or French origin, many of which were adopted during the development of Middle English and the Norman conquest during the 11th century. If you want to learn about the influence French had over the English language, then click the video right here.